Well, early childhood, it was just about the culture, and we were always surrounded by our family in Los Angeles. I didn't really know that being Afghan American made me so different until 9/11, especially when my father was appointed the Afghan ambassador to the US in 2001. My life completely changed. I came to DC, and all of a sudden I was the Afghan ambassador's daughter, I was an Afghan girl, and I felt that I needed to represent my culture to people who had the wrong perspective of it. I was kind of unaware of what the country was like because the Taliban had taken over. My parents always talked about the 1960s and the 1970s, but they didn't really want to tell us how bad things were in the country at the time. And then all of a sudden it was on the news, and that became my life. Afghanistan became central to my life. Well, I actually remember when we were going to the White House, literally, and I was in the car with my father. The motorcade was behind us, and I've never seen him cry. He was such a strong man, and all of a sudden he teared up and he said, "I'm just a boy from Koche Ali Reza Khan," which was one of the poorest neighborhoods in Afghanistan. And he had a very tough childhood, but he was able to make it all the way to the White House, and that really stuck with me. I think from that moment, I knew how important this was to my father and to my country to have a family that could really represent Afghanistan well. So I just dove in, and I went to Sidwell Friends School. The people there were very welcoming, and they were excited and interested in having Afghan students there. Yeah, in DC, it was amazing. When we moved into the embassy, I looked to my right and there was Oman, and to my left there was France, and I felt like I really fit in here and that I was more appreciated, that I could bring something to DC. I actually felt it a lot in the West Coast. I don't think there were many of us, at least in Los Angeles, and people were not as keen on getting to know a new culture. So it really shocked them after 9/11 that they were so close to an Afghan family, and they started to, call us names, my brother and me. We would take it home to our parents, and they would just tell us, be strong and be happy. If you let them get to you, then they're defeating you. So we really just tried to ignore it and use it as a way to get into the work we do now. And yeah, it hasn't negatively affected us. To say the least, my father was a businessman his entire life, and when he came to DC, I think getting into the role of a diplomat was difficult for him because he realized that if he wanted to go to Senate and present things as they were, the Afghan government would be unhappy with him, and this wasn't something that he knew how to do as a businessman. I know it was difficult for him working with the Afghan government, and that's why he ultimately resigned. He decided that he could help Afghanistan through business and through solar energy, and he wasn't given the chance to do that given his sudden death. But there was some friction, you could say that. She did, yeah. My mom loved going to all of the events and meeting everyone in DC. I mean, it's such a wonderful circle here, and even now that we live in Los Angeles, we come back all the time to see her friends. So I just finished law school, and I had met Imal, who's the co-editor at the Afghan conference at Berkeley Law 2 years ago. And we discussed giving back to the Afghan community, and I'm very interested in girls' education, but we thought that a way to do that would be through compiling stories from Afghans and others around the world who have lived in Afghanistan, and then sell this book for girls' education in Afghanistan. I did. Actually, one of the stories was from a woman named Shakila. She was shot in the face by her husband at 17, and that was probably the toughest story to edit because there were so many emotions in it. But the ending was really inspiring because she's in India now pursuing an education. President Karzai was able to help her with funds, and a lot of groups have been supporting her. So she's had many surgeries. Still, half of her face is, it's in a bad shape, but she's doing a lot better. I hope to go back in the next few years. I'd like to build a foundation here and see how I can bring the most value when I do go there. My heart is in Afghanistan, and I feel lucky every day that I was born here, and this country has been so good to me and my family. But I know that, that was just chance that my parents came here, and I need to go back and help other girls who haven't had the opportunities I have.